Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you find value in these videos, go ahead and like and subscribe. It really does go a long way to get these videos out to others, as well as leaving a comment. I really appreciate the comments and I do my best to respond to every comment. This video is going to give you 5 signs or symptoms of social anxiety. You may be already aware that you have social anxiety, or someone may have mentioned that to you, but you may want to know a little bit more about it, or you may not be even aware that you are experiencing social anxiety. Or maybe someone in your life that you love are showing signs of social anxiety and you're wanting to learn more about it. I'm going to break this down into just 5 simple signs and symptoms. This is not an exhaustive list, but this can give you a general idea so that hopefully you can understand a little bit better what might be going on in your life or in a loved one's life. Before I go into the 5 signs and symptoms, I want to go ahead and say that a lot of people will confuse introversion with social anxiety. And these are 2 different things. You can be an extrovert or an introvert and deal with social anxiety. And you can be an introvert or an extrovert and not have social anxiety. So before we go into those, I wanted to go ahead and say that I might make another video about the differences between kind of how social anxiety might look in introverts and extroverts. But I just wanted to preface with that. So number 1 is excessive self-consciousness. So a lot of times people with social anxiety will start really overthinking and really be hyper focused on what others are thinking about them and starting to really be self-conscious on every little aspect of their life. A lot of times that will also then come out in physical ways in their body. So like they'll have maybe excessive sweating or blushing because they're super self-conscious and worrying about every single little thing they do. They might be standing still worrying about, well, what do I do with my arms? Does it look weird how I'm standing with my arms right now? They may overthink every word that they say. Did I stumble over my words? Does my hair look right? Am I staying on topic? Anything that you could think of with self-consciousness, their mind is telling them these distorted thoughts that somehow they're being judged, that they are being, that others are looking on them so critically because they're viewing themselves so critically. This will often lead to a lot of feelings of embarrassment and humiliation because they are interpreting the actions of others in a really critical way and through a specific kind of lens. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not ever anybody ever judging or anybody ever making fun of you in some way. That is possible because people out there can be cruel. But majority of the time, that is not really the case. And this is a sign that you have social anxiety because you are overly self-conscious and interpreting those things that way. All right, number 2 is going to be tying into number 1, and it's negative self-perception. A lot of times you're going to be more self-conscious because you have a view of yourself that is very low. This could include having a low self-esteem, having a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of times just judging yourself way more harshly than you would judge someone else. And a lot of times it involves kind of exceptional thinking, like maybe you wouldn't judge another person that way, but you see yourself as an exception to that. So you'll judge yourself more strictly. Could involve some perfectionism as well with that negative self-perception, thinking that you can or have to do something perfect, but you don't necessarily judge everyone on that scale. But it can become this thing where you perceive yourself through this lens of the negative talk that you've been telling yourself. So you see yourself in a really critical manner, which then is going to cause a lot of that self-consciousness. And it all goes back to your perception. So I believe having a proper view of yourself and your value and your worth. And for those of us with faith, we see ourselves through the lens of how God sees us, who He's created us to be. We are not valuable because our parents say so, because society says so. We're not even valuable just because we say so. I hope that you look at yourself and say, I'm valuable, I'm worthy because of who God created me to be, not necessarily just because I can do all the right things or I'm perfect, because guess what? None of us are perfect. So with the self-perception, the more we can get away from that negative self-perception and how we view ourselves, we can come into a more positive, healthy view. That's going to affect our self-esteem, affect our self-worth, ultimately affect that talk, that self-talk, way we speak to ourselves, to where it's going to be a lot easier for us to not be as self-conscious. But because this self-perception leads us into such a negative place, that often is one of the main signs that you are experiencing social anxiety. Number 3, difficulty in maintaining or initiating conversations. So think about it. If you are super self-conscious, you have a negative perception, a lot of times you're either going to be going blank, or you were so critical of your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own ability to contribute to a conversation. It's going to be very difficult for you to even want to start a conversation. Or if a conversation's already started, it's going to be difficult to maintain it. You are overthinking every single interaction, every single word that you say. It's going to be very difficult for you to know how to engage in that and feel comfortable to engage in that. Now I have this negative perception and the self-consciousness that leads me to really having a hard time in conversations with others. And therefore, this could be affecting that person, either your life or that loved one's life, in such a way that they're not wanting to engage in conversations at all. And it could start to appear that they aren't very friendly or that they don't really like people. And that's not necessarily how a person feels. Over time, if they get a lot of negative responses, maybe to their social anxiety, they could end up developing those feelings towards people because their interactions are resulting in negative responses of others as well. And we have to remember, if you are dealing with social anxiety in your life, or you're looking at a loved one who's dealing with this, realize that there's other people around you that are dealing with this as well, that you're not alone. So a lot of times then, with the difficulty in conversations, you could also be interacting with someone who's also dealing with that as well, which makes it that much harder to initiate or to maintain a conversation. All right, number 4, physical symptoms of anxiety. So another sign that you might have social anxiety would be if you take these other symptoms you see and then you combine it with the physical symptoms that you are experiencing. This could be dizziness, upset stomach, headache, shakiness. There's a lot of physical symptoms that we can have in our body that's actually anxiety. And it can be hard sometimes to figure out that's what's going on at first. But when you notice that you're starting to feel this way as you're anticipating a social event, or maybe in the middle of those events, or even after, as you're overthinking them, you'll notice that maybe they're connected to my anxiety. So if you're dealing with this yourself, or maybe a loved one, especially children, sometimes it can be hard because you'll see physical symptoms in them and you're not sure what it is. And it could be their social anxiety. So start noticing when these symptoms come on, how long they last. Do they tend to come on maybe before an event, during, or after? And then you can see, is this an indication of something physical going on, or maybe just a general anxiety? Or is this an indication that there's social anxiety? All right, number 5, avoidance of social events or social situations. So if you look at this list, if you are feeling self-conscious, then you have a negative self-perception, then you are having trouble in conversations with people, and you're having physical symptoms, and your body is just not feeling in a good place, or you're showing those physical signs like blushing or shaking, it's going to lead you to want to avoid. And what you do is you tell your body, okay, that's the way to satisfy this anxiety, is to avoid. And the more you avoid, the more difficult it makes you to get back out. So a lot of times you'll see, maybe you start thinking again, oh, I'm just not a people person, or your loved one, you're like, maybe they just, don't like people anymore, or it appears somebody that seems like they're just being unfriendly, or they don't like to go out with people. And again, there could be some of that going on. Introverts tend to not want to be in crowds as much, or need that time to recharge if they've had a lot of social events. But if you notice this happening a lot, or even when there's a part of you that's desiring to connect with others, but then you're avoiding all social interactions or social situations that you could get that connection with others, likely you're having and experiencing social anxiety. So as we're looking back over all these signs and symptoms, it's really important to point out that the severity of these symptoms can really range a lot. So a lot of times you'll see people who continue to interact socially, and they are kind of silently dealing with all these feelings, or they have the physical symptoms going on. They have the overthinking that happens after. They have maybe a little bit of that panic that happens before, but you don't necessarily know. But it is, in fact, it is affecting your or their interaction with others. It's affecting your stress level. It is something that you don't want to ignore or excuse or think that it's just part of your personality. Obviously, if you're functioning really well and you feel like you can deal with it, then, that's great. and it probably isn't that severe. And you might not really even have social anxiety. You might just have the normal nerves that people have before they go to a new setting, something like that. But if you notice this being something that comes up more for you, it's leading you to avoiding situations that maybe you could have a good time in, or that something you need to be at related to work. This could be something, like I said, recreational, or comes up in your casual personal life, or this could come up maybe in a work setting and it's really interfering. It's interfering with you speaking up, maybe getting that promotion, or stepping out. Then you want to really address this. So if this is something that's going on in your life and you're interested in working on this, for adults, I have created a digital course. This is a great resource for somebody who just doesn't have the time or energy or money to do week after week of therapy or private mental health coaching. So I want to offer you this resource. If you want to know more about that, I will link it in the description, and you can contact me directly to see how you can get connected with that course. Thanks for joining me for this video. I hope it was productive and helpful for you. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe and leave me a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know if these are symptoms that you have experienced or that you've seen in the lives of your loved ones. And I would love to interact with you in the comments.